it's okay if you start as we agreed, and then I will follow your presentation.
Yes, something's happened to my light, but okay, I'll start off. So good afternoon to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for this session where we talk about the Skillman Alliance and what we're doing to make that sustainable for the future. And we will do several presentations and also have some activities to for people that are joining us. So over to you, Giovanni. You can start off with the Skillman presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Julian. As you see, my conditions are not very good. I don't know if you note my eye. It's big. It's but nothing serious. Okay, I launch the presentation and share my screen. Just a moment to do this. I got the wrong link, but yes. It's loading, just a moment. Okay. So, Julian, thank you very much for giving to me the ball. I will launch now the agenda of the Skillman Alliance, passing through all the part that we have. I'm the administrator, so I have to launch the recording, I suppose. Because you cannot do it. No, someone has already launched.
It's already working.
Okay, perfect. So I was saying that I will go through all the main aspects of the Alliance under my point of view. As we have agreed, we have one presentation like this one, my presentation for setting the scene. Then Julian will make also a presentation going through some specific aspect of the future of education. Then we have the idea also to share, if there will be time, our approach to the online collaboration in a pandemic period. We have set some solution, is also similar to the one that we are using for EAPRIL conference, but it's our own technology and will based on open source. So it's similar to Feedloop. And if there is time, I wish that we can go behind in the backstage to see how we have configured the solutions that will side us in the next period to provide our training services for the Alliance members. So during this presentation that I will make using also my slides, it's possible to interact. I would be very glad to stop and to discuss in case there are remarks, questions, or even reflections that someone would like to introduce during the presentation. So normally, I was thinking to share with you a link to put your questions, and then I can also show the questions in the shared screen. This is possible if you would like to use this link. So if you put in your browser this link slide.app.go.gl/DTRFX, so you can write something that I can also put online in the screen, and then we can share. So it's a nice way to interact directly on the presentation. Now I will start on this, and no, sorry, I will put on, yeah. And now if you write something, I will have here, it will appear to me, and I will be able to propose the text to inside here to all the participants. So let me start now with this vision on skills for Industry 5.0. That is a very strange or very important challenge, because it's the future of industry, is some future that is not yet defined in what it is. So I will try to talk about Industry 5.0. That is something that we have to agree, because there is no unofficial definition of this Industry 5.0. So I will try to make it giving a vision of what we are working on. And the first slide that I propose is regarding our world coverage, territorial coverage. That means we are not focused only in Europe, as you can see, but we have an extension on nearly 100 countries. So this is only the Skillman network, and unfortunately I have not here the data concerning IVETA and the other members, but altogether we are a very wide network of organizations. And in particular, we have designed now the idea to collect together on this concept of Industry 5.0 as a specialized discussion, not only the Skillman members, but other organizations. And in this regard, we have promoted the Alliance that includes IVETA, includes EAPRIL, also includes Assembly of European Regions, and ENI, and other organizations. Recently, also, we have we received the application of ENIC network, that is very important for the accreditation sector. ENIC NARIC, that now change names in actis.com. Anyway, these organizations are distributed worldwide, and all together with Skillman, are focused to discuss in particular the skills for industry of the future, for the future of industry, or the skills for the future. And so this just to say that we have not a omnicomprehensive approach to skills. We discuss in the Alliance. The Alliance is focused only to discuss skills for advanced manufacturing. So this is a characteristic of the Alliance that is important, because the composition of the Alliance is not promoted by, is not done with organizations that are only focused on this kind of skills. So this was launched by Skillman, because, as you know, Skillman is the acronym of skills for advanced manufacturing, and man is not something linked to gender. And in this regard, we are trying to collect other organizations, very important organizations like IVETA and the other that I mentioned, to our reflection. So the network is expanding, and the topic is clear. What we want to discuss is what are the skills that must be provided to workers for the future of manufacturing to have a sustainable development. And in this sense, we follow a vision that is linked to the Copenhagen Declaration, when in the beginning of 2002, the declaration was looking to enhance cooperation in VET, putting together VET providers with companies. Then this vision was made concrete in 2014 by some relevant industrial players like Fiat FCA. At the time it was Fiat, now is Stellantis, the group. There was also Jaguar Land Rover, the Italian National Research Center that belongs to the Ministry of Education and Research, so, and other organizations, Scandinavian Airline System, and so on. And at that time, we launched an initiative that was linked to the sector skill alliances sources from the European Commission. We funded our network, and we started to work on looking to innovation in our field of intervention. So that is the skills for advanced manufacturing. Then this drive brought us to, in a way, to overlap the work of the definition of the smart specialization platform, because we have identified this skills anticipation wave. I will give you more detail on identifying in the smart specialization platform stakeholders, the targets of our activities in the sense of the stars, the most important players, where to detect the information to identify the skills for the future. And then we launched the COVES initiative in 2019, that is still going on, and I will also provide more information for this. And we started to discuss even this idea of the alliance, and then we started to join together common purposes with other organizations of the alliance, and then following the same development of the policies at European level, we have launched this self-assessment tool in 2020 to implement a systematic approach to excellence, measuring the variables, 25 variables we have identified, so measuring the variables for quality, calling this drive the drive to excellence. In this regard, in 2019, and 2020 was the implementation, direct implementation of this, we started also to collaborate very in a consistent way with ETF, European Training Foundation. And then we started to discuss with them the meaning of this excellence. And there is one publishing by ETF also that define this concept of excellence, that we say excellence for all and not excellence for elite, just resumed in few words the concept. Then we have also participated to contribute to the Osnabrück Declaration, and then so we are fully in line with European vision, but bringing the ideas of our members and our capacity to innovate in the sector. So in this field, in this context, we have launched various declarations and documents and initiatives. Currently, we are still running our ethical campaign to redefine the future of learning, promoting the attention to put the values contained in the 17 development goals of the United Nations into the skills of the workers that belongs to the advanced manufacturing. So all these documents in a way integrate or contribute to the international debate, or take source from the European Union official documents. So we try to bring on vision for the future that include the European principles and the foundations of the European Union principles and the development goals of the United Nations. You remember that if you want to interact, you can use this link on the top. The base of our so this is the conclusion and the starting of our reflections on the current challenges that we have in front. I go back just a moment. Here you see the Skillman-Florence Declaration of February 2020. In the Skillman-Florence Declaration, you can find the conclusions of the previous debate that brings to this megatrends vision approach. So we realized in a way that there are specific events or conditions that afflict the world of Tibet, the world of education, our environment as educators. So we talked about megatrends, like 5 megatrends. We were referring to PwC definition, like rapid urbanization, climate change, the shift in economic power that we are that is in front of us, the big demographic changes, the technological breakouts and new discoveries, so the disruption in technology and the pandemic effect, the COVID effect. So we started, we discussed, and then we concluded in the Skillman-Florence Declaration that these mega trends afflict our economies, our lives, and the economic and workplace changes, even given by the pandemic effect. We know how is very known now the teleworking, for example, given to the COVID situation. These changes are making human capital increasingly more and more relevant. So we concluded with the Florence Declaration that there is a new role for the human capital. So even before was important, but in front of all these mega trends, the human capital goes to the center, is the most important focus, and not anymore only for the specialists in education, but for any person. So in fact, even by an empirical point of view, I can say, for example, that for many years, I was experimenting that only few people were in condition to understand what was my work. I think that for you probably was the same. If you get out from the very known and defined world of education and you go to the less known the Tibet sector, when you have interaction with companies and so on. So many people that are not involved in this, they don't understand. When I was trying to explain 20 years ago, yes, I'm a specialist, I work in vocational training sector, I design curricula. Nobody was understanding what was the meaning. And my parents also was asking to me anytime, what you do, Giovanni, because you go, we see you to go and to come abroad, but what are you going to do? So now I think that there is a new conscience, a new capacity of people to understand that the human capital is the real capital, is the new gold. The new shares are the human capital, and this is linked also to the meaning of the certifications. I will go to this. Then the human capital means that we have to provide people with green skills, digital skills, ethical skills. This part of the ethical skills probably belongs mainly belongs to us and is not so largely diffused. But I think that if we reflect on these groups of skills, green, digital, and ethical, I think largest part of the people that we interact could agree on this. So what are the characteristics of the human capital for skills for industry, for the industry 5.0? So what are the characteristics that we have to design for the future of industry? And when I say the future of industry, I mean the future of our society, because it's very much linked the concept of the future of manufacturing to the future of the society, because as we see, our life is full of results of the manufacturing. And if you don't do a good manufacturing process, not in terms of quality, but in terms of selection, what you produce, instead to have medical appliances, you could have more weapons. So this is also an ethical approach that is not linked to religions, but as I said, is linked to sustainability and future of humanity. So this human capital, this human capital focus asks us to reflect on changes. And reflecting on changes, we need to think what are the changes in terms of exactly Industry 5.0. So the thought is what is and what is not Industry 5.0. So it is not a new revolution, because we already had this revolution in the way to produce. It's not a new technological approach, because we already have Internet of Things, composite materials, big data, so everything that is Industry 4.0 is not another digital transformation, because of course this digital transformation, it is still ongoing. So we are not thinking to something new. We are thinking to how to implement all these transformations and new things for the future, in a future that is more human-centric. So this is not my definition. I got this on the debate of the I4MS. is an important project that we collaborate with the Barcelona Mobile Capital responsibility. So it's a complement of Industry 4.0, is a human-centric approach to the manufacturing, and mostly is a workforce transformation. In this regard, the changes that we need, in one side need the change for the workforce, in the other side need the change of the approach that the industry is intended for. So we need an industry that is at the service of the humanity and not the reverse. So I have added here below green, digital, and ethical, that is obvious. I have added the human centricity to sustainability and resilience. So this is the difference of the approach. We need a different approach for a different meaning for industry. And Industry 5.0 must have to mean something that is related to the humanity. The human-centric approach, I think, is the most important aspect in this regard. So, good. We have an idea for the future. We need to go to a new kind of industry. We have challenges to how to provide our workers with these concrete skills. And we need a switch in the idea of the industry for the future. So we have a role. TVET has a role. TVET has a role for re-engineering the system for this change. We need to anticipate, adapt, and improve the skills that are necessary. We need to understand, we need to detect information, so we need to understand what is the future of manufacturing, because this is also the future of society, and we have an important role. The challenge we have is to design this future. And what are the tools of TVET experts like you and me? Is to design right curricula, because with the curricula of today, you design the future of society, because you design the skills that will be implemented and will be then and then will define the environment. So the human capital is in the center, and we know, just for example, that 44% of Europeans are without basic digital skills. So it's a very, very big challenge, I think, to talk about Industry 5.0 when you start with this situation, because we know how much is important the digital aspect of the competencies. So it's I think it's a challenge that is not so simple to be faced. It's something very, very difficult. We need that the workforce need to pass from an intellectual to practical knowledge. And it's our duty to equip individual with skills and with credentials, because when you talk about capital, I take in mind the shares. So you need to define how you manage this capital. No, there is a market of when there is capital, there is some exchange and so on. So the capital must belong to people. So people have to own their own capital, and all the capitals together can make the society of tomorrow. So we need a system that recognizes these credentials in terms of skills, because are the skills that when are spent influence the way how the society acts. So when you define a skill in a curricula, you use verbs. Means that behind the skills there are actions. And when you make an action, you make something that has a result on the society. So what we need to provide is the credentials to give to recognize the capacity to people to make actions and to transform the society. And the skills that we have to promote has to promote a positive society, not a conflictual, not a society that destroys itself. So something that think to the future of the humanity. In other words, we need to provide qualifications to people, because qualifications are the combinations of these aspects and are, in a sense, also roles that you play in your society. And this is very much connected with our approach to ethical skills. So qualifications have to include also ethical skills. And we want to provide an ethical impact to the society, designing the curricula of the future. So re-engineering for change in our approach means to pay attention to what are the skills necessary for the future, not forgetting the ethical skills is a must. When you sit around the table and you decide what are the skills for the future to be put in your curricula, and you collect different contributions from experts, from social parts and whatever, so you need to have also the representatives that can bring on the table, on the floor, the idea on what are the ethical skills necessary for your territory. This that I'm talking about is also an understanding of the role of the curricula design for designing the society, the future of the society, that include the aspect of the sustainable goals. So the attention to ethical skills is not something that must be linked to the religion beliefs, but only to some, in our approach, something concrete for the future of the humanity. So let me see, we don't have any audience remark, so I go on. So in this sense, my idea is that there is a shift from education to TVET, because we need to move to a new dimension, a new planet, the planet of qualifications, because these roles that you play in the labor market and in the society are relevant in the same time for many parts. So if you get a qualification, you have a role in the education system or in the TVET system. But then you have a role in the labor market, because you can go with your qualification and you can spend your credit, your capital in the labor market. So the capital is immediate. You can withdraw your cash. You go to the machine and you get something, because the labor market pay you back. And in the same way, the society also pay you back, because when you play a role, you have a role in the society, you mean something to design the future of a society. So we need to move to this planet of qualifications, where the qualifications are a result of the right design of the curricula that include the positive skills that are necessary for a fair, equitable, and so on society. All qualifications have roles, and we need to decide what are the qualifications necessary for the future and what are the ingredients of these qualifications in terms of skills. And the shift among education and TVET, in my opinion, is the meaning that TVET is taking, considering that more and more important the concept of lifelong learning. So the education or the learning along all your life period, that makes the education becoming just a small part of your life, respect to the rest of the education, that is the TVET, that instead decide your life for the complete drive of your life. So how much is relevant TVET respect to initial education is increasing, is very much more impacting TVET on your life than the initial education, because initial education can be 20, 25, 30 years. But now the average age duration is 80. So you have 50 years in TVET and 30 years in education. So it's very much important. And also knowing that the changes are so quick, so rapidly. So you need to adapt yourself to complete changes in terms of a few years. And this means that the TVET in this regard has a new role, because it has to bring people to the changes of ethical aspects. For example, if you think to health and safety, no? Health and safety is a concept, even under the European regulations. You need to adapt every day by day. You need to update your hazardous evaluation, the assessment of risks on work. And then you need to update the capacities of the workforce to face the risks. If you think, for example, to the crimes linked to the use of internet, it's the same. You need to update your skills, because some crime, for example, before the use of social platforms and so on, was not possible. If you think to bullyism, for example, online bullyism. So this means that the changes in technologies also make changes in competencies that are necessary to do not become criminals. So you need to update your skills to be in the new dimension. And this is given to TVET in many cases. So even if you have good initial training or in education, but then you need to continue. And this is the shift that I see in this regard. This is not only my opinion. Luckily, we have the commissioner, Nicholas Smith, that has declared that vocational education and training is more important than ever. I totally agree with this, because we need to provide people with the skills. And in this picture that I have given, I think that the European Commission is in line with our own vision for the future. So the TVET you can find in the European Commission website. TVET responds to the needs of the economy, but also provides learners with skills important for personal development and active citizenship. So these are the three roles that I was saying before of the qualifications. So you don't have only a result in terms of owning an educational degree, but you have a role in the work, in the labor market, and also as a citizen, because you can spend your role to make something good for your society. The idea is also to look to the future, so this planet of qualifications, taking in mind that we start from a known planet. So we start from the current planet. And then means that we need to be aware about what are the starting situations, design something that can bring us to the new situations, the new planet of qualifications. So designing learning pathways, making the learners part more conscious and responsible for the future. So what is the situation we start? Is a situation where the curricula are not designed starting from the needs of the population, but with other mechanisms. So we have of course, we have the market demands and so on, but we need to switch to a design of curricula approach that include the learners, because now we are the experts of these, and we are designing the curricula for the future. So what I see, for example, in many cases, curricula are very strongly protected. There are national ministries that decide when and how to change curricula. Another case, for example, in Asian countries, they have more flexibility, and we see how many drives are open in parallel to design curricula for the future. And there are experts that design this curricula. I know experts in mechatronics, my friends that go there and design everything, but no one of these drives put the learners in the center. And I was saying, now I'm designing the curricula, I'm 57 years old. When this curricula will bring their effects, probably I will be retired. It's not for me, it's for the coming generations. So we need to have a new way, a new approach to this design of learning pathways, because there is a strong responsibility. What you put in this design process is the society of tomorrow. And why you want to say what is the society of tomorrow? You need to interact, you need to involve and drive the youngsters to become the leaders of this process. The future with the present in mind is also an important concept in providing these credentials that I was talking before, because we need to give this responsibility to the youngsters, providing them with the ingredients of the capital, the human capital. So we need to move to them the capital. So the capital has not to be something owned by the institutions. It's the individuals that have to take their own capital. Because, you know, if you have shares, you can influence the decisions of a multinational company, but you need to have the shares and to vote. And this is the same concept. You need to own in your individual learning account, you need to own to own your skills, your capital, then with these keys, you can access to the future. So this is the concept that to move to the planet of qualification, you need the right keys. And the keys are the concept of the individual learning accounts. If you own the key, you can move on because you open the right doors. So going to the future with the present in mind means in this approach that all individuals have to become responsible for the decisions of the future, because they will own in their own individual learning accounts, they will own the human capital, they will dispose of they will be able to dispose. And then this make the possibility to change, to decide what are the skills that can be used for going to the future, to the planet of qualification. You must become a leader of your development and responsible of your development. So you have individual choices linked to the packages of skills that you want to acquire, and capacity to spend these skills composing curricula and design of curricula that are offered, done in involving the young generations in the process. I would like to mention in this regard that OSD define this concept, and there is an interesting policy brief on this. Design of individual learning accounts is a key for success, and we agree on this. Then there is the last changes at European level, and we have a European approach to micro-credentials that is also an important document. And we know the big number of discussions that are ongoing on our TVET tables regarding this aspect of the individual learning account. So we are fully in line with this. We have discussed within the Alliance many times the relevance of the micro-credentials, and so all this, it's a very complex argument. We have the Europass, the new system that was renewed recently, and we are trying to implement and to diffuse the Europass tool. I would like to conclude this first part. Is 40 minutes. Okay, sorry. This first part of the presentation saying that, of course, to look to the future with the present in mind, we need to take important decisions about curricula and learning pathway design processes. And we have to keep clear that individual learning accounts are the key for this process, is the key for the future. So how we try to respond to all these challenges as Alliance, we have different tools and solutions. One aspect that we have launched, as I announced before in the timeline, is the Global COVES initiative. So COVES.eu is a consortium of or transitional platform of skills ecosystems joined by different authorities and ministries, regional ministries and private organizations, TVET partners in particular, and companies that represent and condensate, or condense, I'll say in English, I'm sorry, and merge together all these reflections in creating consortiums that believe in this mission to provide people with the skills for the future that are linked to the development, to the 17 development goals. The concept we have implemented to launch the coves.eu platform is the one of David Finegold, the economist, is to put together companies with policymakers, vet providers, individuals, and a triangle of knowledge and innovation that put together the research and development, the TVET with higher education and business industry partners. So this concept was made concrete, putting together at territorial level different stakeholders that represent all these parts. And we have launched this initiative a few years ago, and in parallel we have launched the self-assessment tool that, as I told before, is referred to, is looking to detect the information regarding the skills needed for the future curricula, or for the curricula of the future, approaching the smart specialization platform stakeholders. So as you can see in this slide, the orange arrow represents the flow, the approach to the flow of information or to the stakeholders. That is like the salmon way on the river, no? So it goes in the opposite way, because the natural way of this graphic is from left to right. To go to market, we need business ideas. These business ideas pass through the innovation process and the supporting process of the smart specialization platform actors. So you need the funds, you need the concrete, made the idea concrete, then you need to launch the startup or spin-off or whatever, and then you go to market when you have passed all these stages, where you have fund your capitals and so on. So you can have, in this drive, you can have support from different organizations, from different consultants, you can collect funds from different sources and so on. But when you arrive to go to market with your original idea, you need the labor force. And the idea of this anticipation life cycle is that you need to find the labor market, the workforce available in the moment that you go to market, not after. And to make this synchronous, you need to detect all this information and to input and to put in the learning pathways, in the origin of the process, the new information, making possible that in the time that you are developing your business idea or your new production, then someone works on the competencies, so from left to right. And when you arrive to the market with your production, then the labor force is ready. So this is a concept to reduce the gap among the new technologies and the skills available in the labor market. And of course, including ethical skills, ethical values into the skill sets. So to be able to provide the workforce in the right moment, equipped with all the necessary skills. Because you know that when you introduce new technologies, new solutions, there are new challenges for ethical skills that must be also considered, and better to do not wait the last moment, but to build these skills related to the new technologies in the right time in advance. You can think, for example, a stupid thing, but like the 3D printing. With a 3D printer, you can print whatever you like. But if you are provided with the right ethical skills, you can print medical appliances instead to print weapons. So these decisions are given to the individuals. How to use the technologies is part of the ethical back package that you bring with you, and the ethical back package cannot be created when the technology is already on the market. You need to start to work in advance. And we try to measure with this self-assessment tool, we try to measure the performances of our consortiums using 25 variables that are in the existing literature for quality in Tibet, linked to all what we are discussing. And we produce radar charts and reports that allow our members, the members of coves.eu, to understand their own performances in comparison with the performances of the other groups. And the concept behind this is the concept that this is something that is ongoing, is an alive system, is a continuous improving system based on the concept of excellence for all and not excellence for elites. That means that your performance increase if the performances of your group increases, because your curve is the result of an average evaluation of your group and not your own your individual performance. Andreas Schleicher from OSD, sorry for my bad pronunciations, has said this important thing for me. So we used to learn to do the work, but now learning is the work. This is linked also to the concept that I was saying before, no, in the role of Tibet that is changed. And I think that I find this concept very important and really true, because we have changed in this regard. We have changed how we act. We have changed how we learn. And if we can see the periods of our life that are changed in this regard, and we see how much much is important our period in working for learning. So how much is important the life that the period of the life, the part of the life that we spend in a working environment, we understand how much is important to reflect on not only what can be the production of the future, but what can be the workplace of the future. So because the workplace, even if it's virtual, is the occasion to learn. And in this regard, we have a model that looks at the work environment as an ambient for learning and not as an ambient for production. So if we need to redesign the skills for the future, we need to redesign the system. And we are talking about the need to redesign the skills, to redesign the curricula pathway, the learning pathway, to design the curricula, involving the future generations in this process. Well, the place where you learn along your life is the workplace, the work environment. So the work environment is not anymore a work environment. The meaning of the work environment has to change, has to switch to an ambient for learning. All that we do in a working environment is something that is provoking learning, is provoking a change in our skills. And in this regard, we have also envisaged the skills, we call the skills rings. That is something linked to the concept of learning factories, learning working environments, where with the contribution of the workers, we create a new knowledge. And the same time that we create this new knowledge, we learn. Because one very good approach to learn is to teach. And when you share, you are teaching, you are offering your knowledge, you are making systematic reordering in your mind of the knowledge, and you are going on in this process to learn, trying to sharing with the other. So the learning environment can be changed, asking to workers to share and to learn by teaching, to make a social sharing, to make rewarding and linking resources, also introducing gamification aspect in the working environment, and thinking to a new system where the information is the base of this learning process. So it's also an integration among humans and machineries, because you have sensors. Sensors provide you information, and then this can help you not only to work better, but to evolve as workers. The lockdown effect was to move or to put 94% of the population in front of lockdown measures. So under CEDEFOP research, 75% of the European workers had to experiment remote working. So I'm discussing about a new working environment. We need to use the sensors and so for production, but this can happen also at distance. Our members, for example, in the Skillman Alliance, are promoting the use of remote laboratories for learning. So it's possible also. For example, there are already farms where you can print in another part of the world. You can use 3D printers to print mechanical parts, and then these parts are shipped to you with the logistic support. So this means that there is a change in the working environment, not only in the traditional way we are used to think about it. There are millions of people that are already working in a smart condition definition on these platforms like Fiverr, so there are several platforms where freelancers offer their services. No, we have designer, we have I don't know, many things that are of course less linked to the material world and more linked to the information, to the not material production. Anyway, all these professions and this change made us to reflect on the possibility and on the need to organize virtual mobility for our students, for our learners. Because if it is possible for 70 million people to work in Upwork on Fiverr, this platform, why we don't provide our learners with the same working conditions? That means a virtual mobility. Of course, that the virtual mobility cannot replace the physical mobility when the physical work is still the drive. Of course, this is not possible, but we have discussed the possibility to have a blended virtual mobility, for example. And to make these occasions concrete, real, we need the companies that are designed in the proper way. So we need, for example, data-driven companies. We cannot organize an online collaboration if there are no data to be exchanged. Even if, for example, we discussed also the possibility to have the sending organizations like the sending TVET providers, for example, to make, to allow the use of their own laboratories to make the students, the learners, able to receive inputs from a company abroad and to produce in their own laboratory, in the laboratory of the schools, what the company is looking for. So these are new ways to approach to this excellence for this vision to the excellence in education. The book that I was mentioning before is this ETF book. Now there is another important book that define all these aspects, not so in deep probably, but anyway, touch all the arguments. The Powering a Learning Society During an Age of Disruption is published by Asian Development Bank, and there is a chapter dedicated to the arguments that I have mentioned. So I'm going to really finish now with the last two slides, Julian. Thank you for your patience. So this is the graphic that represents the participation of delegates to the last forum that the Alliance has organized. And so there were 656 delegates coming from 88 countries. So the participation in the 4 days was this one, more than 600 logs in the first day, then 400 and something, then the peak is the 3rd day, and the 4th day, in effect, we were all tired and we had less participation, less participants. So anyway, this is a small conquest for us, I think, because so we are only sourced by voluntary work. So we are very happy about this participation and grateful to the colleagues that have given us this attention, participating to our initiative. So Julian, I didn't receive any audience remark, means that there is no need to go deep into something. If you want to take the floor, I don't know if Haske would like to react, say something, or Christina, I don't know if there are other participants. I see Jorik and so on. I don't know them, so probably Julian, please take the floor. I have talked too much.
No problem. Thank you very much. I'll share my screen now. So if you'd like to stop sharing.
Yes.
So one of the things that we are very impressed with Giovanni and Skillman is the visionary thinking. And that is why, you know, it provides a completely different viewpoint of how we look at education. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow that on, because everything that Giovanni has said is really, really relevant and true. But what we also need to consider, sorry, there's something happening in the background, not me. What we need to consider too is we have to look at the narrative of TVET going forward in the future. So really, you know, when we think of TVET, what is it? And the thing is, usually we look at these usual professions and people all think, oh yeah, that's TVET. And then the common assumptions with TVET are that it's low prestige. You probably didn't get into university or higher education, so go to a tech school and that sort of stuff. And we really want to change this perception that TVET is a second-rate option, and that actually you can achieve a lot of prestige and that you can have a very, very good career out of it. So let's look at the world today. You know, we have this thing from the World Economic Forum that shows how complicated our world is, because look at all the things we have to consider, all the variables. Giovanni mentioned 3D printing, the environment, air pollution, advanced manufacturing, all these things. And then of course we've got newer technologies like 5G, and how the governance of the internet is overseeing everything. For example, people demonstrating against Facebook and Instagram because they are trying to sneak in all these ways of grabbing your personal information. So, and our world is so much more diverse now. And out of all this, we have to try and reshape our economy after a devastating 1.5 to 2 years of the pandemic, while still trying to harness this thing called the Industry 4.0, which to some people they're still like, what is that? And then we have all the other things that we have to still do. For example, developing sustainable business models, not the slash and burn type of model that we have seen over the last century. And as Giovanni said, we have to look at our own social human capital. How do we look at the social contracts we form, the skills we need, and the jobs for the future? So these are really important things. Now, last year, the World Economic Forum released its top 10 skills for 2025. So have a look at them there. They have all the usual things that we've been talking about for many years now, you know, analytical thinking and innovation and that sort of stuff. But if you look at that more closely, you will see that all those in red are actually skills and abilities that we have been linking with TVET for many, many years. Number 6, for example, creativity, originality, and initiative. You know, if you're a graphic designer, we would expect you to have that already, right? Complex problem solving. Okay, if you're an engineer, you definitely need to have that. And then everybody wants their students to be analytical thinkers and to be innovative. These are things that we have expected of any person solving a job in the TVET industry. Even if you are a plumber, when you come in to fix a blocked sink, you have to really analyze and think where the problem is and how to fix that. So when you move that up a level to, you know, the automotive industry or even defense, all of that brings these things together. So let's have a look at a few facts and figures. You know, that we know that the job landscape is changing tremendously. So in 2020, you know, they found that 84% of employers were digitalizing their work processes. And that was even before they realized the pandemic was going to hit them the next year. So business leaders also expect their employees to be able to learn new skills while they are on the job. So we should not think as educational institutions being the be all and end all of education, that once the student leaves us, they are all perfect and ready for work, because actually they need to be still malleable and flexible enough within the work environment to learn new skills and to work as a team. And 44% of employees were expected to work remotely. Okay, this is 2019. So it'll be interesting to see what trading economics research finds out after the year we've just had. It'll probably be a lot higher than that, I'd say. So what happened? A shift in 2020 from March onwards. We found that 1.3 billion children were forced to stay at home because schools were closed around the world. Okay, and then WFH became the new acronym that we all know now, working from home. So because of that, distance education flourished. And no choice, educators, workers, students, they were all dragged kicking and screaming into technology in order to cope. So everything was a whole bunch of webinars, talks, and lessons. And as far as education was concerned, people were learning how to use technology to teach, how to design learning materials, and how to assess students online. But the demand for skills has only increased. So we talk about TVET being a vocational side of education. How can we effectively teach TVET at a distance online? Okay, can you really learn a vocational subject at home? So for example, if you're doing textile manufacturing, can you learn how to do that adequately? If you're learning how to do welding or electronics, can you learn that adequately at home? Can you also learn it effectively so that by the time you finish and graduate, your employers will have no qualms about hiring you because you learned at a distance instead of in a physical school. Okay. More importantly, from an educational perspective, how actually easy is it to teach a TVET subject online? So, for example, if you're teaching graphic design, that's possible. What happens if you have to teach people how to make clothes? Is that easy to teach them online? Sorry, Husky, are you saying something? And then more importantly, what about assessment? How do you assess that somebody has learned their skills adequately and effectively online without being next to them and watching them as they do it? So questions to answer, but also very relevant because the upcoming important sectors and industries are these ones. As you know, we have just had COP26 talking about the environment and sustainability, artificial intelligence and virtual augmented realities. These are all part of Industry 4.0. And you've got now biotechnology because we've just had the first vaccine to be manufactured in under, I don't know, 3 months. When you think about all these things, that's just amazing. When people put their minds to something, they are able to create something, even if they're hived off in some far off location. So how do we actually innovate in TVET is the question. Well, we need to look at our learning content because a lot of the things that we're teaching our students now, how relevant are they still? Okay. We need to look at ways of learning. So we just mentioned about learning online, learning at a distance, okay? But not just that, because when you teach through a screen like this, how do you keep somebody's attention? How do you make sure that they listen and integrate everything you have given them and be able to output it in a useful manner? So we have to look at the psychology of learning as well as the methodologies of learning. We have to look at the ways of teaching because I don't know about you, but at the beginning of 2020, when we were all forced to go online, I had so many teachers screaming and crying, saying they don't even know how to do certain things online. How can they teach students online? So, and then teaching online is one thing, designing the content for teaching online is another. So a lot of schools didn't give their teachers that sort of support, and they were left basically flailing around on their own, trying to find a way to teach these students. And also the students, part of ways of learning, they haven't been taught how to learn online either. So there's a lot of things to think about. And then the technology, okay, that we use. What technology can we use to enable the learning to be more effective? But we mustn't forget the world of work because work techniques keep changing. And as WFH becomes bigger and bigger, it also means that work techniques have changed. The ways of doing things have changed. The technology that has been used has also changed. In many cases, it has become better. So students need to understand, and teachers as well, because if you're used to something that's been done for 20 years and something new has come up, how can you be brought up to date in order to teach that to your students, right? So there are so many areas we need to consider in order to innovate TVET and bring it up to the level that we would expect to be effective. So question is, what is your approach? How would you put a new emphasis on TVET to make it on par with higher education? So we have to look at all the stakeholders, and this is why the Skillman Alliance is very, very keen on its Global Coves project, because we have to consider all the different stakeholders that we're working with, you know, the learners, educators, employers, society, government. we have to look at what skills we actually want to be working with. Okay, and these are some of the areas. I'm not going to go through all of them, but as educators, I'm sure you can see why these are important, whether it's just teaching them a functional skill to do this one thing, or do you teach them within a wider context of why this one action is important, etc., etc. And then there's all that stuff about IQ, EQ. And then from the teaching perspective, we have to understand whether or not we're teaching children or whether we're teaching adults, because we're talking of two completely separate methodologies, pedagogy versus andragogy. And you know that they're very different. You know the way that adults learn is completely different. And then finally, the area, of course, that we cannot ignore is technology, because it allows us to increase the inclusivity and accessibility. But at the same time, that is also a problem, because sometimes technology is too expensive and too difficult for people in poorer countries or disadvantaged communities to actually have access to. So we have to consider all these things based on who our stakeholders are. And of course, the advent of artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence means that we can now do so much more stuff with our teaching than was ever possible. So these are just some examples of good TVET practice around the world. Some of them are very low tech, but still very, very important, because it also talks about what Giovanni said earlier about these human skills, ethical skills, greening skills, and that sort of stuff. So also it's important to have good life skills. So for example, in Spain, home economics classes are incorporated in the syllabus and inclusive of boys. So they say that home economics is not just for girls. You don't just need to learn to cook if you're a girl. You can also learn to cook if you're a boy, because you need to be able to look after yourselves. For example, if you leave home and go and study at university and you're staying in a flat with other friends rather than eating out every day, you can save a lot of money and also learn important skills of social skills. In the Netherlands, for example, they have something called regional learning, where students work with the region, the farmers, the local entrepreneurs on real world problems. So they form a little group of advisors, these students, and the farmers or the entrepreneurs come to them with a problem and say, listen, we are having issues with trying to produce this milk and then shipping it to this place. What do you think we can do to make it easier? And the students take on this real world problem that is affecting the region they are in, and they try and come up with solutions. So this is actually gaining real work experience while they are studying themselves. In Singapore, the National University of Singapore has allowed their students to create their own modules for part of the curriculum, and they're even able to suggest their own teachers. So if you have a favorite teacher, you can say, okay, I want Mrs. Johnson to teach me instead of Mr. Smith. And you can decide when, where, and how you want to learn. So that's quite interesting, because it was felt by the university administrators that if the students felt motivated about the subject matter, and they were the ones proposing it, they would have a lot more success in the subject matter than forcing something upon the students. And I'm sure most of you have heard about educational technologies in Finland, where students use virtual reality or digital tools to learn and simulate skills. For example, when I was in Jyväskylä in Finland, we did this virtual reality experience where we went inside a body and the lungs specifically, and we could see what happens when somebody starts smoking for the first time, and what happens when somebody is a chronic smoker for 20 years, and how it changes the lungs from the inside. You could click on certain things, expand that, go inside the organ. That's such an amazing way of learning, and it completely changes the idea of just sitting on a desk with a textbook and staring at the blackboard or whiteboard. So I think, changing the way we look at TVET and how we practice it is so good. And finally, in the US, Walmart, the big retailer, has something called returnships, whereby they employ former caregivers, particularly those who gave up their career to look after a loved one who has been inflicted with a life-changing disease like cancer, and at their own career expense. And they say, listen, we're going to give you a chance because you were so dedicated to look after your family member that we're going to reward you. We're going to give you 4 months of training in networking and CPD and software. And then after that, if you're good enough, we will rehire you as part of our team. So this is good TVET in practice. Giovanni has already mentioned some of the recent European initiatives and emphases. For example, the Pact for Skills, which for the first time is really placing a lot of emphasis on the TVET sector by bringing in 3, I think it's the aerodynamics, defense, and one other sector. And then they are now really pushing this concept of Centers of Vocational Excellence, or COVs as we know them. And the Skillman Alliance has come up with an even more international concept of COVs by having our global COVs concept, whereby we expand this across the world. They are pushing the digital competencies for educators, as you know, which is really a very good framework because it looks at both educators and learners. And also this European skills agenda is really pushing for skills to be embraced. And part of that is the key recommendations for lifelong learning, the eight key recommendations. So again, all these things are really part and parcel of TVET. And if we actually go beyond just splitting everything into different categories, we will all realize that all our education is one, and we shouldn't say this is TVET and this is higher education, because at the end of the day, it is about education, jobs, and skills. And of course, micro-credentials, which everybody's talking about. And I personally think that if we start to over-regulate micro-credentials, that is the wrong way to go, because that's not what the real aim of a micro-credential is. So as mentioned by Giovanni, the Skillman Alliance comprises all these organizations. We really work hard. We have 4 peer learning clubs focused on these areas where we try and create policy papers, obviously for advanced manufacturing, because Skillman is for manufacturing. Advocacy and policy influencing for that at the governmental level is very important to us. And we want to make sure that work-based learning is a key part of the future agenda of any EU policy. And also, we can't have work-based learning if we don't train the trainers. So we need to make sure the whole ecosystem is well covered. And some of the activities that we've been doing to try and increase coverage and knowledge about our activities include having lots of webinars. I think we had something like over 100 webinars last year, Giovanni. It's quite amazing and exhausting, but we covered areas such as EU funding and opportunities, TVET topics, specialist topics like adaptive expertise, adaptive micro-learning, special things like that. We also have conferences like the SIF 2021, which took place last week in Portugal and Bologna and online. So that was exhausting too. We're all still recovering. And IVETA also runs various conferences around the world throughout the year. And that's really what we have been focusing on. And hopefully you enjoyed listening to that. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Otherwise, it's over to you, Giovanni.
Thank you very much, Julian. No, I have a question because it's very interesting to see your presentation, not for the technical contents that I'm always always surprised about your capacity to clarify the concepts. Regarding the activity that we have done, because you resume in one slide very important efforts that we did together. Thank you very much. Yes, we organized a large number of webinars. I think that this is a real capital for the future, for provoking and for supporting our members in advancing in excellence in Tibet. The plan now is to, I see a nice, ciao. The plan now is to valorize this capital together. I think that the alliance among Iveta and Skillman and the other members is very fruitful and promises for the next years very good results. And the next step, by my opinion, is to valorize all these the capital that we have accumulated, all these webinars and the linkage among experts and all the aspects that we have been able to highlight, because many times, thanks to these webinars, we discovered the capacity to identify new topics, new challenges, a new way to reflect that are important for all of us. So just a small question, Julian, about this. What's your idea about this plan for the future? Because we have running in parallel in one side the COVES.eu initiative, the Global COVES initiative, as you underlined, is a global initiative. And we have all these resources that we want to valorize. What is your plan? What you have in mind to make this for the future?
Well,
I'm sorry about interrupting. I would like to remind you that in a while the session will be finished.
Yeah.
Yes, Christina, thank you very much. We are going to close.
You're welcome. There is also a question in the feed loop if you want to check it before the session closes.
Thank you. I'm not connected. If you can report this or just put copy and paste in the chat of Zoom so I can see.
I think that the question was from Ms. Haske. So
Yeah.
if she wants to read it.
Aske, please. Okay, but I did a question to Julian. But anyway, can we, Julian, listen also the question from Aske? Aske, can you switch on your microphone so we can interact? Now he's off.
She has to run, unfortunately. She just said that. But her question was, she can interact with us by email. Thank you.
Thank you, Aske. Ciao, ciao, ciao. So, Julian, last step for you, then we have to close.
Yes, so, well, I think do you need me to answer? We are already 2 o'clock now, so.
Last 30 seconds to close the conference with the vision for the future in your side, and then we close.
Okay, so thank you very much to everybody for joining us today. I think what is really important for us to understand is we need to make sure that VET education is on par with other forms of education and not necessarily seek to distinguish between them all, because ultimately they are what needs to drive our human civilization forward. So therefore, we should really place a lot of emphasis on the future of skills and focus on the skills being the ultimate aim rather than categories of education. So that is my overall take on this.
Thank you very much, Julian. So we close. Thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take
care.
Bye. Bye.